Mm-hmm.
And I think metal is like the absence of fear in a musical context. And that's going to lead to like, well, let's just do that.
Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Belgian Jasper. If this is your first time at the channel, hit subscribe right now. Maybe just before we get into it, finally releasing this second album after a hectic few years. Does that mean that I'm talking to an extremely exhausted Andy, or are you a super pumped up, energized Andy right now?
I feel a little bit of both, to be honest. My first child, was born on the 7th of July, and the album came out on the 8th of July. So that was a busy week for me. And
congratulations.
Yeah, there's moments of feeling totally exhausted, like learning how to feed a newborn and learn how to be a dad and on the edge of sanity. But then there's also moments where you're just like, it's just all of it is so worth it that it actually adds more energy than it takes on both sides, music and family.
Now let's talk about a little bit this roller coaster, like even on top of the fact that you became a father, which is life-changing on its own. The first we hear from you guys is in 2020. Just as the world is completely falling apart. Maybe quick there, kind of prophetic to see that you guys, your single, what was it, Isolation and Antivirus, at the very start of the pandemic. That was, thank you for that. That was very prophetic. But then you have your debut album out now. Less than 2 years later, you've got your second album out that's getting a lot of traction, being picked up by label. But also the world is opening up again, and you're starting to actually see the real reaction of people onto what you've been doing. How weird is it to realize that the last 2 years were actually real and all of that actually happened, and this wasn't just some weird dream in which you had this band with new albums out? Seeing the reaction of real people now,
real is 100 times better. Like we did like a 360 virtual show thing, like when we couldn't do shows, and we built a studio in my backyard. I'm looking at it. It's like 15 feet by 20 feet studio, and like we tried to film some stuff in there, but like honestly, like just being with people is like, that's what we're made to do. So when we're playing live, that's our natural environment, and just honestly, I think we all feel like the best versions of ourselves in that setting. And so I think the whole, those years of like figuring out what are we gonna do as musicians, how are we gonna make the most of this time, I think that's when we went like, you know what, we don't know what the regulations are gonna be, we don't know what live music is gonna be like in a few years, we don't know anything, but we do know that right now we should make the most of this time where like really no one's telling us what to do. We have tons of free time all of a sudden, and we can really just think and we can do. And so I think it was just like it was a time where we just knew that like we should make this count, because this is not going to last forever. And that's when we wrote Sentinel.
You say we the entire time, which is great. At the same time, you built a studio in your backyard. You are the main songwriter for the band. You are obviously also the singer of the band. Is this a band, or is this the Andy project?
I would say it's a band. Like it's sort of like a bobsled where like you're kind of single file, and like I'm in the front seat, and I think that there's so much that goes on that you're never going to see from the outside from really any band. We're no different from that. I think we, the countless band practices and collaborations that we have kind of just turn into like, I am a product of the people that I hang out with, right? And so like even, yes, I'm the main songwriter. Yes, I contribute pretty much 100% of the lyrics. But as we're making those songs together, that's like I'm the sort of dude at the front of the bobsled, and we're all flying down the chute together, and there's no way I would go down that alone. And what's so cool about that is, you know, I'll throw out an idea, Ben will be like, well, what if we played it this way? You know, Gio's take on the instrumentation or on the percussion side is always like, he always like nods his head and he's like, oh, I see what you mean. What about this? And it's like, whoa, like, you know, so I'll throw out an idea, but by the time Ben and Gio get their hands on it, it's a different thing. And so it is a collaborative process, but I think I'm the crash test dummy and usually the guy that, like, you know, just jumps off the cliff first, and then they jump right in with me.
Yeah. Now, for the guy that jumps in or jumps off a cliff as the first one and takes a lot of this on and puts a lot of your own emotions and thoughts and journey into the music and the lyrics, when then everything starts to accelerate and you got Solid State picking up the band and you know, which is great because now you got, you know, music videos and more promotion and more people are gonna you know, discover you guys. Is there also an element of the captain of the bobsled not liking too much that all of a sudden you're not in full control of that bobsled?
I think there was a little bit at first, if I'm honest. Yeah. Because there was a lot. I mean, once we got signed and we started making a real record with like real professionals involved, and it wasn't just us self-producing, there's a lot of opinions that start flying around, you know, and that's a really jarring moment for any artist going like, hey, you know, you kind of, you know, you made it sort of like to the starting line of this new game, which is even more collaboration with more people that won't ever be in the spotlight, but are essentially like, you're making your band just grew by like more people, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think at first, I was like, well, I know that things are done that way, but I want to do it this way. But I think that because of the kind of people that Solid State is, and really the kinds of people that I got to work with on the production side of Sentinel, I think I was really humbled by a lot of that stuff, by like sitting back and going like, yeah, the end product really is better that we're doing it that way. Okay. You know, and then I really did get a chance to learn a lot, especially from Jeremiah Scott, Ryan Clark, obviously in the vocal booth. Like when you're recording vocals with Ryan Clark sitting like right there, like it's a huge confidence boost to go like, okay, he's going to see stuff that I'm not seeing. So I think that there's a lot of initial like, well, yeah, but what got me here is that I'm the artist, you know, and then you start to quickly realize it's like, well, yeah, but what got them there is how good the end product is. So you have to mesh those things together, and if you can allow that process to happen, then you really get like world-class product, which is what I'm after.
When we read the lyrics, we follow a being in search for a better understanding of its identity. You use some metaphors that are sometimes quite on the nose. A journey of self-discovery that doesn't necessarily have a happy ending. Is that a nice way of capturing the essence of the story?
I think that's a really good way to put it. I never really thought about it that way, but I think that's true. You know, it is a story, and I think that, you know, my background is film in theater. It's kind of where I came from before coming back around to music. So I always think of things in terms of like a grand narrative or like a bigger story, and so it always starts with like, well, what story do I want to tell? And I think for a lot of musicians, they discover that as they're writing songs. But for me, I have to like kind of decide like, where do I want to go with this thing before I set out? Because it's, you know, like my dad's like a wilderness survival guru guy, and like he, depending on where he's going, it's going to change like what gear he takes on that journey, you know. And some people are more like, well, I want this gear, and then I'll see where it takes me, you know. But I'm more of the former that's like, let's decide what we really want to give like a year to our life to or more, and then whatever that's asking of us, like, let's give that.
what I love about you guys is that you're one of those bands that I'm sure make a lot of PR teams scramble on, okay, how are we going to label this thing now? And, for fans of, insert, famous bands, I'm sure you've had some fun seeing other people try to define what you guys do, because you bring a pretty explosive cocktail where you throw a couple of things together. There's some traditional thrash elements in there. I mean, I can only assume that's a couple of you guys have listened to Testament in your life.
Oh, yeah.
There's definitely some Lamb of God in there as well, but then there's just as much a Gojira or Devin Townsend in there. So a bit of a experimental or I think prog is an overused term on itself, but maybe for this conversation, a proggy mix of metalcore, thrash metal, and some groovy death metal. Is that? Let me just start with that. Is that indeed as much fun as I think it is for you to kind of see people figure you out?
Well, it's fun on the backside, but it's actually like scary on the front side.
Okay.
Like what you're describing is 100% like nailing all those references. We're kind of a product of what we listen to, any musician is. And for us, it's like it'll start with an idea, and then as that idea evolves, you have two choices. You can either stay on that initial track that you're like, okay, this is but I was trying to sound like Killswitch Engage or whatever, right?
Yeah.
This thing was inspiring me, but then there's this other thing that happens that's like, but I'm also hearing this, and then like we realized like pretty early on in the band of like, well, it's actually more metal to like not be afraid and to let go of like maybe what the genre lanes are telling you to do, and let go of that stuff and just go, if I'm hearing this melody that's like, it doesn't feel like Tough Guy at all, like in reflection, the like break in the middle that turns into like a melodic solo, it's not a shred solo. It's actually like very like soft hearted like thing. And I kind of was like looking at Gio and Ben, and like we kind of like looked at each other like, are we really gonna, let's do it. Like we don't have anything to, like we do have everything to prove, but at the same time, like if we hold ourselves back with like, well, what's that Tough Guy gonna think of us, it's like, well, screw that. Like let's just, if we hear a melody, that's like, let's follow that. And so then that leads to like what you're saying, where it's like PR folks and people are like, well, this isn't death metal, or this isn't throw XYZ combination, and so it's just like, I don't know what to classify it, but if you really aren't afraid, like that's what brings us back to the word metal. It's like, well, what is metal? And I think metal is like the absence of fear in a musical context, and that's gonna lead to like, well, let's just do that, even though it's not a strict genre lane. We don't really care about that.
There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on also for a 3-piece, and so bringing that to life on the stage, that could be a challenge. Are you maybe more in certain songs than other songs, but are you like kind of having to go through like, okay, this is the set list we want to play, and we're gonna have to make some adjustments to make sure it translates well to a live setting?
Yeah, I think all of it is really just solving problems, and like one of those ways that we solve that is with layers. Like it's everything that when you say like, hey, there's a lot going on, there's like a lot of layers to a sandwich. Like one of my favorite sandwiches, like I'm thinking about it, is like probably 20 different ingredients, but it feels like one thing,
right?
And so I choose, well, what's the thing that I want to perform, what's the thing that we individually as the 3-piece want to perform, and then we kind of had to like let go of our like purists, like, well, we don't want you know, sound beds, or we don't want backing, you know, loops on a thing. And like once we realize like we're way more committed to like the artistic expression of an idea, the sandwich. Like this shop Other Coast in Seattle has a sandwich called the Raging Cajun, and it's like it's one thing, you know. So I'm like, if I want to give somebody that song, I'm gonna play, you know, this part, and then I'm okay with punching a button on my pedal board. I could even show you. Let me just show you. This is my live board for metal, for Opponent, and these buttons here allow me to sort of like call back different layers of different songs. And so I've kind of just like, I don't want to hit play and be like on karaoke mode and like lip syncing to anything. Like it's not like that. It's like, oh, this is the cheese in the sandwich, and this is the, you know, the meat, and I'm going to be the cheese now, you know. It's so like I have like a way to like chef up what's happening in the album, and even like slightly different variations on those songs and those different intros. Like the way we play Running live is a little bit different. But to answer your question, it's like when you play a song live, it has its own, you know, thing going on than just the recording. And it's just about, as performers, like how do we want to solve those problems? And the way we don't want to do it is like hit play and then all of a sudden you're three karaoke dudes playing along to like a backing track. That's not what we're not doing that. We're actually making the music in front of your eyes, like three chefs in a kitchen.
This is where obviously Ryan comes back into this conversation as well, because Ryan didn't only help you with this album. He's obviously also Ryan Clark from Demon Hunter, and you guys are gonna go on the road with them. People that are going to discover Opponent on those shows, what can they expect?
I think they should come with almost no expectations. You know, like we wouldn't be where we're at without Demon Hunter, and that's a long story. But I think when, like, I love watching them play live. You know, my story with them is my background's in film, and I'm like a cinematographer and DP, and like I worked on a lot of Demon Hunter music videos over the years. Anything from like pyro effects to like some of the more recent videos from Peace and War. Like I DP'd some of those, and so that's why I approach music from like a cinematic standpoint, because that's my background. But when you go to a Demon Hunter show, like even though we're opening for Demon Hunter, like I'm still sneaking out into the audience, and I want to see Demon Hunter, because I immediately turn into 16-year-old in a candy store watching Demon Hunter. I think for watching us, you know, try to leave your expectations behind and just enjoy the music. And, you know, if you're into it, then great. If you're not, it's all good.
This tour is gonna kick off in September, if I'm not mistaken. So that'll be super exciting for all the fans, whether they're fans of Demon Hunter or Opponent. It'll be a great show to see, and I hope I get to catch that show on the road as well. Andy, I just want to say thank you for your time today, for answering my questions and sharing a little bit more about what all goes on behind the scenes when this album was created. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I wish you guys all the best with the continued release cycle, as long at least if you have some time in between a few changes and feeding moments that you might have to run to as well. Congratulations again.
Well, thanks for having me, and I'm super excited for you to be a dad as well.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. You are awesome for watching this video. Click right here to see more content like it and subscribe to the channel.